Welcome to Jumpstart Your Joy. I'm your host, Paula Jenkins. I invite you to join me as we explore how inspiring people have chosen joy in their lives and what they have to share with us about how to jumpstart joy in the world. Plus, how do we follow our own hearts, find work that lights us up while mindfully noticing the role that joy plays in our own journey. Welcome to episode 64. I'm Paula Jenkins, a life and career coach and host of Jumpstart Your Joy. In honor of Thanksgiving and Giving Tuesday this week, I'm sharing an interview with Amber and Brady Black, which originally aired as episode 11 last year. I just love this conversation with the two of them. They are the founders of SeriousCreatures.net, which is an amazing, very artistic website. And last year they were both teaching at Home of Hope, which is a home for abandoned and abused children in Beirut, Lebanon. I hope that you really enjoy this interview. If you want to follow along with the show notes, just head over to the website at jumpstartyourjoy.com/episode 64, and that will redirect you over to the show notes. And if you want to subscribe, you can find Jumpstart Your Joy on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Player FM. And please subscribe, and you will get a new episode every week sent directly to your mobile device. And so without further ado, I bring to you the interview with Amber and Brady Black. Welcome to the program, you two.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Thank you so much for saying yes and joining. I know I've already emailed and said that I'm so excited to have you guys on the podcast. I think I first found you on Instagram, but I don't know where that lead-in was. Just love the art. Brady, I understand you're the artist.
Yeah, for sure. I'm the draw guy.
Not me.
Yeah, and Amber is the smart one. She's the business mind, and pretty much anything that has to do with normal life and being successful, that would be Amber. I just sit around and draw nonsense.
I love it. And then, the other really neat thing was that when I started to get to know your story better on your blog, and if listeners want to go on over to SeriousCreatures.net, they can find you guys there. There's also more of a story, which is that you guys work at a home for abused and abandoned children in Beirut, Lebanon, where you are right this second.
Yeah. Exactly.
So it was just this really interesting kind of, story that has an "and" in the middle of it.
Yeah. There's a lot of crazy inside that "and."
There's a whole lot of crazy inside that and a whole lot of, are we sure this is still a good idea inside
the answer is no. We're not sure.
Okay.
But it seems like the right thing, so that's what we do.
What led you guys to where you are, and how did you guys meet each other?
We're going way back.
That's way back.
Yeah.
We're taking it back. This is in the 90s.
Yeah. We met at college, actually. I was a freshman, Brady was a sophomore, and we had a physics class together, and then kind of began seeing each other around campus and found out we had mutual friends, and just kind of things went from there. We married 3 years later in 2000. It's a long time ago now. We've been married ever since.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Congratulations.
That's what usually happens.
No pauses. Regardless if we wanted them or not. And
I think that's how marriage is.
Yeah, for sure. But so we just celebrated our 15th wedding anniversary last month.
Congratulations. That's wonderful.
Yeah, thanks.
And so what did you guys study at college?
I studied everything. I was a serial student for a long time, but in the end, I graduated with my bachelor's degree in recreation. So very, very studious study of proper hammock swinging and good mini golf form.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and in the end, it was actually about recreation business. At least that's what I like to tell people, so I feel better about myself. And then I got my master's degree in linguistics.
Oh, fun. That's awesome. And how about you, Amber?
Yeah, I did business administration, and my focus was on human resource management and organizational behavior. And then I went back and took some foreign language classes, but not much. We ended up moving overseas, and so that was better foreign language class offerings.
So as children, this is usually my first question, but now it's the second one. What were your early sparks of joy?
Yeah, it was interesting. This is a hard one for me, but I think that some of how I would define joy of just having this thing that kind of makes you come alive inside was probably reading for long periods of time in the car. I remember my family took a lot of road trips on and off during my life, so it would give me time to just finish a whole book, in basically a sitting, and I would just love that feeling of just being able to get lost in that and just being inside my head or whatever. And I think as I got into high school, that translated into conversations and just discovering things about people and the way they saw the world and being able to learn from people and stuff. I'm one of those late night conversation people, and I just really love that. It just connects with something inside of me that I love so much. So I feel like those were the early iterations of that kind of thing, but it's kind of, I don't know, it might be some of my earlier memories of just being home inside that feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, what were some of your favorite books?
I remember reading a lot of Nancy Drew mysteries. I don't read mysteries anymore. But I remember reading a lot of those. And then when I got in high school, I wasn't particularly reading for fun anymore because there were a lot of books being pushed my way. I really loved The Good Earth and Animal Farm were some of the ones I loved from the years of having to read.
Yes, I loved Animal Farm too.
Yeah, and I think for me, my earliest sparks of joy, I don't really remember, like, my early childhood wasn't as super fun, just with like divorces and all this kind of stuff, and I was a real anxious little weird kid. But I do remember having a pretty strong imagination. Whenever I got in trouble or whatnot, and I'd sit in the corner, that was perfectly A-okay with me because I would just play with like whatever that little stucco stuff is on the wall, like the textured wall. I would make up scenes, with like the shapes, and I would have whole stories that would go on. So while I was they thought they were punishing me. Actually, I was just like having fun, just like staring at the wall because I could making stories and stuff like that. And then whenever I got older, I think I really enjoyed just adventure things, climbing tall trees, going rock climbing, going surfing, like mountaineering and things like that. Whenever I was in high school, I really, really enjoyed that. So I think those are probably some of my earliest memories of, feeling at home and the things that I was doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, there's a rabbit on one of our walls that I sometimes see and just think, how'd that get there? In the orange peel or whatever they call that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, it's funny because we live in the Middle East, there's a lot of carpets and the kind of like that Persian style of carpet, and so there's always all manner of faces and animals and all kinds of crazy stuff in those things, and sometimes there's scary faces, and I'm like, I really don't want to see the scary face. And I'm it's like before we buy a carpet, I've got to really look at it and be like, all right, are there any bizarre scary faces that are just going to stare at me at night?
Yeah, I like your thinking. I have a 5-year-old, and it's probably something he would see and point out.
Yeah, for sure.
So you guys run a creative online shop called Serious Creatures. So what led you guys to move to the Middle East?
Whenever I was studying in my master's degree, I realized that I would like to teach English and to travel. I enjoyed both of those things and thought we would enjoy living overseas. And to actually make money being an English teacher, there's only a few places that you can do it, like South Korea, used to be Japan, not so much now, Taiwan, in the Middle East. And so we were like, okay, well, we'll try the Middle East. It sounds good. So that's how we got overseas originally. It was just, for me, just teaching university at, various places in the United Arab Emirates, the UAE, like where Dubai is, and then Oman, near Saudi Arabia. Taught in universities out in the big fat middle of the desert with the Bedouin, and then also in the capital. And so that's kind of how we initially got overseas.
Wow, that's cool. And Amber, what were you doing when you guys first got to the Middle East?
I was being very sad.
She was not.
Oh no.
Yeah, I love culture and languages. I'm happy to live overseas, and I feel like I'm really a learner at heart and just take everything in. And so those elements of being anywhere else in the world have always really resonated with me. And so on a deep level, I really love that and appreciate it. And the Gulf specifically, it just seems like maybe it was this long season of one thing after another that just couldn't get going that was kind of important. And so, for instance, the expat community is notoriously fluid. So people are always coming and going or whatever. And so, for years, we just didn't really have a strong community. And when we live in the States, before we left and then even now when we go back, we'd been worked at a dorm for 7 years where we lived on campus. We lived and worked with our staff mates and our kids or whatever. And then after that, we lived with families, like our friend families. And so here, we get out to the Middle East and there's no one to have dinner with on a regular basis. And so that was just kind of shocking. And then it just didn't change over time. And I think for me, everything that I kind of know myself to be, and we were a little older. I mean, some people are able to go overseas for the first time when they're a little bit younger, but we were like 31 or 32. I just kind of know myself a little bit, and all the things that I really love, there just wasn't an outlet for that, and there wasn't the opportunity to serve in any capacity in that part of the world. There are real needs, but they're mostly kind of kept out of the public eye, especially for Westerners. And so, you're not really invited to participate so much in something like just something that could be helpful to the community. And then just on personal level, it was like I love learning and connecting over books and stuff. And it was just hard, when you're non-native English speakers or you yourself aren't fluent enough in the other language yet, it's really hard to connect on some. It just kind of seemed like at every turn I just wasn't myself, and I wasn't really dressing how I dress, and I wasn't really doing things that I would usually do. And, I'd love to cook, but anytime you're in a new environment, you're trying to figure out how to use what they have instead of what America has. So it was really tricky, and I got really depressed for about 18 months when we were first over there, and didn't realize it until quite a bit later. And then from there, things improved, but they never really...
Not thriving.
Yeah, they were never really thriving.
Yeah. Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, it sounds like there was probably a sense of isolation, even though
for sure
it was a place that you were with Brady, but still kind of hard to find your way.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah, and it's also, that culture is very different, obviously, but it's very different for women because for me, there really isn't anything asked of me as a foreign man. I can make cultural faux pas and no one's really going to care, but for a woman, it's a much, much bigger deal. And so there's just a higher amount of restrictions and things forced on them. And so that affected Amber much greater than it did me, because I could just go out and have tea and watch people play soccer all day. And that's no big deal. I could wear shorts if I wanted to. People just look at me funny. Yeah. But, for a woman, it's just not possible. And so that really helped a lot with isolation because because Amber really could never go out, or we couldn't really have mutual friends because men and women don't mix together. And so all in all, it was just 5 years of
That's not awesome.
Yeah, 5 years of not awesome. Exactly. But we learned a lot, out of it.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for sharing and being open about that, Amber. And it's never easy. I mean, just to be transparent, I after my son was born also ran into some depression and that kind of thing, and it's really rough because you kind of can't figure, or at least I couldn't figure out which end was up, and knew I didn't feel like myself, but what would make it better, I didn't know. So yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly.
Funny enough, what made it better was how Serious Creatures was born, actually.
Really?
Yeah, it really is because, Brady had been drawing also because Brady had a somewhat, half crazy wife. And so he was stressed and he just continued to draw as an outlet and all of that. And people had really it was friends, of course, at that point. But we're like, hey, where can I get a print of this? Hey, are you selling these? Can I get a print? And at the time the answer was no. But then I was like, well, why not? And I do have this business degree and I love kind of figuring things out and learning about new stuff. And I was like, well, why not? It's like we could, I could find us a printer. We could figure it out. There's no reason to not let a person have a print of a thing that they want.
Yeah.
And so that kind of began, I guess, a path where it was always raising new questions. Like, so the new questions, like, well, what happens next? What do we do next? Do we do this thing? How do we do this thing? What does the online business world look like? Because we're now connecting online. These questions were, of course, coming from Facebook and stuff. So you have the social media element, which was not a thing when I went to college.
Right.
And so there's just all these new learning. We were finding that it was really good for Brady and I because, as he mentioned, in that culture, the men did stuff with the men, the women did stuff with the women. So here was this thing that we actually could be doing together, and that was exciting to us together. I think it was good for me personally, just to have a project to work on that was going in a specific direction. You know, I had been kind of trying to, as I was coming out of the dark days, one of those things, you know, was, well, do things that just make me feel like me, that I would want to do. So I was writing some, and I was letting myself read again a lot and all of that. But here was this thing that actually kind of had some forward momentum to it, like it could go somewhere. And it was good for me, but then it was also good for Brady and I because we had this thing that we could work on together. So it's kind of this shared hobby. And I think that was really good for our relationship in that period.
Yeah. And isn't that sounds so special, too, that it was like a reconnection for you guys or a new connection point, but also like, I don't know, with social media probably exploding around that time, another connection point for you with, I don't know, the old world or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
The place that you've been.
We had e-friends now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you.
Which is great.
Yeah. I have an e-friend.
Which is fun. Which is really fun.
Yeah. It's interesting how quickly all that changed.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a strange new world. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you found new inspiration, Amber, and that you found, you know, things that brought you joy.
Yeah.
It's hard. You were in Oman and then you moved to Beirut?
We'd been there for about 5 years. And at some point, Amber let me know that we probably weren't going to be there for another 5 years. So it just wasn't sustainable. You know, we weren't finding, we had given it like a legitimate shot, you know, at trying to fit in and doing these things. And my job was great. I had a good job. For us, we just weren't fitting in the way that we would like to for a sustainable thing. So we started just looking at other, opportunities and what we were going to do. In the end, a beautiful situation kind of unfolded where a friend of ours had a guest over that I didn't really know. They were talking about this home for abused and abandoned kids in Beirut, and one night, and we just happened to be in the room. They weren't talking to us. And whenever, after they got finished talking, I began a conversation with that guy. We talked till like 2 a.m. And then 3 weeks later, we were checking it out in Beirut to check out the home. So really it was, just a perfect timing because we were looking to transition to something else, and then we saw this opportunity. And so when we came to visit, it's crazy here. So whenever we saw the home and just all the kids and hearing their stories, it was difficult to even consider going back to just a normal university. I worked at the biggest university in the country, and these are some really privileged kids, and their lives are made. And for me to go, well, no, I think I'm going to go back to that life, and now that I know about this, this other life out there, I was like, I can't unknow about it now. And so in the end, it was an easy decision to say yes, but it was a very, very hard decision to actually do it.
Sure.
Yeah, that began about a year of, because I finished out my contract, and that began a year of major anxiety on what on earth are we doing. Yeah, I was not super fun to be around.
One thing we've discovered is that imagination and anxiety often go hand in hand. So Brady's
one of them
imagination
is
is only equaled by his anxiety.
Yeah, one of them is fun, one of them is not fun, because all of the nonsense I can dream up, I can also be very worried is going to come to pass.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting. I'm going to have to see if that's true in my own life. I like that insight, yeah. Well, and how amazing that there was like this synchronous event of like just the right person at the right time. Like that's gorgeous.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really, it's really fun just to think about it because, it was after, I finally came to terms that we needed to leave, and about 6 months after that, we had this opportunity come get presented to us. Yeah. So it's beautiful.
Yeah, that's cool. Home of Hope. Who do you guys serve? I know you've said abused and abandoned children. Are they all Lebanese, or who all comes to your doors?
We serve all kinds of kids. As far as we know, we're the only home in Lebanon who does that, who accepts kids regardless of religion or background or papers, like the status of their papers. And so we have kids who were born in Lebanon and so technically should be Lebanese, but for whatever reason, they won't be granted citizenship, which is just kind of one of those things that countries do decide for themselves, and they don't fall under Lebanon's whatever clauses to gain citizenship. We have a good number of Syrian refugees and a good number of Palestinian refugees, which is actually the makeup of Lebanon in general, is its own population. And then they received a huge influx of Palestinian refugees, and then now we have, I think the country's about 4 million people, but we have over 1 million Syrian refugees added to that. The home kind of reflects that mix in society.
That's amazing. The whole Syrian refugee thing is so heartbreaking. Like, that doesn't even begin to explain, I don't think, the depths of it. So
yeah,
have you guys, you've seen a lot more children coming from Syria?
Yeah, we were the kids that we receive are from the government, so meaning like they've been picked up by the police or some sort of domestic abuse situation, prostitution rings and things like that have been broken up. But the majority of the kids who come to us are from a Syrian background because they've been taken off the streets and stuff. So they're either living on the streets, like under bridges, or they are like selling or begging on the streets, selling chewing gum or various things like that. So it's a really, really dangerous situation for them. There's lots and lots of sexual abuse that happens for boys and girls on the streets. I mean, if you can imagine just sitting in the highway in a traffic jam, and then just people, kids, 8-year-old, 5-year-old kids are just walking up to your windows, and so it's those kind of kids that that we get primarily.
Wow. And do they live at the home then as well?
Yes, yeah. They live at the home for anywhere between a few weeks to 10 years.
Wow.
And it depends on every one of their cases is different. And if the court decides for whatever reason that they'll give them back to their parents, then we have to give them back to their parents, regardless if we think their parents are good people or not. But a lot of the times, the parents just abandon them or go into hiding or something because either they're in jail or they're going to go to jail or all kinds of stuff. And so when they do that, the kids stay for much longer.
Yeah.
And the way that we found, I think, best to describe the nature of Home of Hope, we don't really have these in the States so much anymore, or I don't think, but it's almost like a very large foster home. Like there's this process of their parents being considered unfit or abusive or neglectful, and that given by the court, like decreed by the court that this is an unsafe situation for the child. But there isn't foster homes in Lebanon yet. The fostering system doesn't exist yet. There isn't anywhere to temporarily or long-term for the kids to be. And so they come to a home like ours, and then they're with us, some for a very long time, if that's the length of time that the circumstances for them continue. We just kind of function as the home for that because there aren't individual families that take in kids. So.
Wow. And how many children are in the home?
70. 70,
wow.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. How do you guys approach, for the education piece, how do you approach that? Is it by, in a U.S. setting, it'd be by grades? Is it by achievement?
We wish. That's an extremely difficult puzzle piece to try to figure out and fit in. And Amber has been doing a great job because, she enjoys thinking through impossible problems, and this is clearly a super impossible problem. Yeah. And so we come up, because our kids come to us all manner of education backgrounds. So most of them have never been to school, or if they've been to school, they've only been like 1 or 2 years. We've had 17-year-olds who don't know how to hold a pencil. You can't put them in by age. Right. Because, especially...
They're really sensitive to that.
Yeah, they're really, really sensitive to that. They don't want to be mixed by age. And so they also, or have disparate ages, because you'd have a 17-year-old with a kindergartner. Mm-hmm. So you can't really do that. And you can't do it by like a normal class level, because you can't assume that all 15-year-olds have the same education background. So they'll, one of them can't read and one of them can read English and speak French, and so it has to be extremely individualized, which is all well and good, except for we don't have the staff or the money to do it.
Yeah. And you have the situation, if we're working with the kids that we have, and teaching them things. And we're always getting new kids. And so at any age level, there's always this new situation. I'll tell you a story from yesterday that illustrates this. I came in to the class. It was an older girls class, and one of our girls who's probably about 14 or 15. Actually, a lot of our kids, they don't know how old they are. The kid doesn't know. The court doesn't know. So they just don't have papers. But I think she's about 14 or 15. And she was, we would say, getting an attitude with the teacher. She wouldn't work on a thing or whatever. And the teacher was explaining to me that essentially she had reached a point, and they work on Rosetta Stone English a lot. It's self-paced. They don't have to get ridiculed by a teacher or anything to, and I say ridiculed because they feel ridiculed, not because the teachers are ridiculing. But they can just kind of work at their own pace and be safe. And she'd gotten to a point where she needed to be providing the letters, and knowing her English letters, but she didn't. And so the teacher was encouraging her to go back to learning the letters. But that was making her feel really stupid because the other girls in the class knew their letters. And so here she is working on her letters in front of these girls who honestly aren't that far ahead of her in English, but they had just had the opportunity to learn the letters previously. She was just feeling so down about that. But in reality, earlier that day, her family had come for a visit. And this is just usually traumatic emotionally for our kids because, they're away from their families, they're getting adjusted to the home, but then their family comes back up, and it's just all of these emotions. And so I knew that she was also just on this heightened emotional state for the day, I ended up pulling her out of class and talking to her about it and trying to create a scenario where she was safe to learn her letters, but where she would just stick with us, where she wasn't like, I'm going to quit because I'm not already smart enough. But also we're just navigating that these kids have really tough situations, just psychologically and emotionally. They're just, in the end, it's like she really does want to learn. She really did want to do it, and she just kind of needed this personal approach that just could kind of say, hey, you're smart and you can do this. And when I was learning Arabic, I didn't know the letters, this isn't, you're not stupid. You just have to start somewhere, and why don't we try this? And you let me know if it works, and I think that the kids then feel like they're seen as an individual, and they're cared for, and they need that just as much as they need to know their letters. And I think we've tried to figure out, how do you have a somewhat personalized approach when you have almost no teachers and a revolving door of 70 kids.
70 kids. A good quarter of us don't speak Arabic to the
the
needs. Yeah, my Arabic isn't at this heart level of let me emotionally help you through. It's no, my Arabic is, isn't that level yet. So it's challenging on every single turn.
How interesting too. I wouldn't have thought. I mean, if I tried to teach in French, that would be awkward. And yeah, I guess that one of the things would be that it wouldn't sound heartfelt, probably, just because I'd be stumbling for words. That's interesting.
Yeah. But there's a lot of, you end up connecting a lot with these kids just with a lot of, you're smiling and you're not yelling at them. And, and in the end, the bar these kids have been through so much just nastiness that the bar is really, really low. And so if you're kind to them and love them, then it's, they'll work with you.
That usually communicates.
Yeah, that communicates a ton, even though our Arabic is a disaster.
Of course. Yeah. Well, and how loving and beautiful that you can create a space where they start to know that they're emotionally safe and physically safe, but that you guys have their back. Wow. Thank you for doing that. Yeah. How do you guys take care of yourselves in the midst of kind of that kind of emotion and knowing the trauma that the children have been through?
Still learning that part.
Yeah.
For me, it's in the end, the things that are difficult for me are the stress of help run a school that is very unique and extremely administrative heavy. I'm not that good at that. So that's really, really stressful. Additionally, I'm much more of an emotional person than Amber is. And when the kids pop off and get attitude and, don't like the thing that we've created, I feel a real burden to, really try to make our stuff as best as it possibly can. But it is the best that it possibly can. It's still just not good enough, And so I feel just kind of an emotional burden from that, And so for me, a lot of it is trying to figure out how to rest, from the stress and really just trying to, just speak truth and understand the situation that we are actually in. We're not going to be able to do the things that we would love to do just yet. Right now we're going to have, and there's going to be, and what's real difficult is there are kids that will fall through. We can't get it. We can't get every kid. Someday hopefully we will. I mean, there's kids who've left or for whatever reason, and I'm like, we weren't able to help you, and just having to go, like, when I think about them, I go, well, that motivates me to work really hard to hopefully catch the next one, and to be able to provide something where the next one is being cared for better.
Yeah, well, I think in terms of taking care of ourselves, we are still figuring it out, and I think one thing that we're sort of lucky to have, I think having moved to the Gulf first and having gone through that enormous transition, and in that we've just realized that there is a period of transition, and especially if you move overseas to another culture, it takes so long to get your bearings and just to get things set up in your home. I mean, we've been here a year. We just got a single table in our house like 2 weeks ago. So we've just not had a kitchen table or not whatever. And I mean, a table, and for us, a desk, I mean, the place to work is pretty crucial. But so many things are happening so quickly, and you don't know where to shop. It just takes a while to get your life set up, to get familiar with how things work. Like our electricity goes out twice a day, and that affects so many things internally and then between each other. We recognize that it just because things are away right now doesn't mean that they always have to be that way, especially if we're actively working and thinking toward letting those things find a better place. So at the moment, I think we do try to get out. I mean, that's one thing for sure, because we're between the apartment and the home, we're about 5 minutes. We live about 5 minutes away, and with so many things to do all the time and then being so tired, it's super easy to just be at the home and be at home. And so just getting out and exploring the country we live in and trying, new restaurants, or I think reconnecting with things that don't have anything to do with serious creatures or with the home. And for me, a lot that's reading and learning, but about things that don't have to do with business or, educating kids, just kind of stoke other interests and things, I think is pretty important.
Yeah, well, it takes a lot of courage both to, go abroad and jumping into the situation that you guys have. That's so admirable and so courageous. Like, I can only imagine that it would take a while to get your bearings and have it feel, like solid ground under your feet. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. We keep hoping that someday it will feel more solid.
Yeah. It's one of those things that I think is both harder and easier than you expect. It's harder than you expect in that coming in, you have no idea all of the little nuances of your day, and you don't yet know the way that certain things will affect you. And in terms of seeing the things that we see, when you come in, you don't have a way of internalizing that yet, or a way of looking at it or dealing with it. Those things will develop over time, and you're not necessarily ready for that when you come. At the same time, there's this part where if you just look at it as showing up and then trying again tomorrow and trying again tomorrow, it's really simple. I mean, living overseas is really tough, but the actual part of just kind of saying, you know what, this is the next thing we're going to do. And so we're going to go and we're going to let it unfold, and we're going to take it one day at a time. And we're going to just show up again tomorrow. And if a person can be successful at kind of quieting all of the questions about the future and, all of the, what does it all mean? What does it mean? I feel this way today. What does it mean? It's like, it just means you had a hard day. Just go to sleep, but there's something that I think is both harder about it than you expect, but also can be simpler about it. I think it sounds a lot more, impossible than it is sometimes. So
yeah, there's a lot of wisdom in that, about kind of just taking it for what it is, but showing up again and again and again. And there's probably a repetition with the kids that they aren't maybe even used to somebody showing up again and again and again. So
that's for sure.
That's true. Very
I'm
true.
sure that's beautiful for them. And
yesterday was a really, really hard day. And we call them Home of Hope days. Some days are just very home, and yesterday was one of them. And so everybody was having a difficult day and is frustrated. And at the end of the day, this one kid who is pretty rascally, he's always has a lot of, is very frequently disrespectful attitude, which is pretty common. But he's really, really smart, and so this is why he gets in trouble a lot. Well, I don't know what I was doing. I was just playing with these kids. I brought a bunch of them upstairs, and I just had a period of activity, just like, we're just going to play. And at the end, he left, and he just turned to me, and he goes, "Mr. Brady?" I say, "Yeah." He goes, "I like you." And I was like, "Thanks, man." I mean, that was it. And,
so cool.
Yeah, and so I was like, thanks, and I was like, well, and I think that's the thing that, to answer your question of how we emotionally get through, is just this idea that really all that, as I was saying, the simplicity of it, like really all that we're asked is to show up and love these kids, and we don't have a rock star education program yet. We don't have the funding that we need. We don't have all this kind of stuff, but we can show up and love these kids, and they seem to be able to get that, and at that very base level, it's like, if we showed up, then we had a successful day.
That's gorgeous. I'll just let that sit. There's nothing else to add. One question. Is there a way that if listeners wanted to help, is there a way to get involved and help at Home of Hope? How could someone do that?
So if you go to the Facebook page, and it's just facebook.com/Home of Hope Lebanon, there's a newsletter, subscribe from there. And it comes out once a month, but we're able to share like something that's going on with one of our kids, stuff that's going on at the home, and specifically our needs. So like at Christmas time, we'll have a wish list. We do that actually in the spring as well. Most of the stuff that we use in the school, if we can't get it in Lebanon, which is a lot of stuff, we have to bring it back from the States. Doing that kind of a thing, things that we need, or financial donations are really the biggest way to help, unless you want to come out and spend 4 months and like be an intern, which is a very real possibility. Being hands-on or sending, and it's usually money, but for specific needs really is the most helpful way to get involved. I think a lot of times people want to get involved by sending like clothes or sending, these different things, but that becomes really tricky because of customs, and there's a lot of corruption in receiving things and stuff. And so I think those two ways are really ways to get involved. But we do try, both in the newsletter and on the Facebook page, to be posting pictures when we can. We can't show the kids' faces usually, but nevertheless, it's like, well, we want to see that you're helping them go to camp, and you're helping them like have this fun experience or learn these things, or here's kind of what we're doing. And so I think that's a way to stay connected. And then from staying connected, if something resonates with you, one of the initiatives or the programs or something like that, then there's always opportunities to give or get involved, and certainly come visit if you want. That's always there.
That's awesome. Thank you. And I'll link that up for everybody to go over to Facebook. And thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah,
but about that.
Of course. So if we move on to series Creatures, how did that start? I know you guys talked a little bit about that kind of earlier, but where did it start, and where did the name come from?
Yeah, so we started working on this during that difficult time. At first it was just Brady had been drawing whatever was in his head, and people were asking to buy it. So we first figured that out, like to have a fine art print of a thing. What is that? And there's a surprising amount to learn. I'm sure you've experienced this, like beginning to podcast and to blog and to have a website. There's just so many things. You're like, there are so many things.
There are.
And so it kind of started there. And then at some point, one of our friends had asked, she said, here's the thing. I love writing these note cards for my kids to put in their lunch boxes, but they're always making fun of the drawings that I draw because I can't draw. She's like, I don't know if you ever have room for this, but if you ever could just draw like, a little lunchbox card with like a little drawing on it, but where I could write them a note, on the side, they would just love that. I would love that. That's the thing I need. And we were like, oh yeah, this makes so much sense, because so many, moms want to do stuff like that and want those things to be, like maybe more whimsical or more in a classic illustration style. And we were like, that could just be fun. And, for a mom who wants to be able to do that, then she can do it easily. So Brady began drawing, at that point, series of images that would kind of go together in one way or another to be used essentially as lunchbox notes. But we made them in such a way that they can be used as gift tags, or, you can put them on that plate of cookies that you're taking to a neighbor or whatever. So then he started drawing this set. So there was ballet and there was Christmas, and that was just really fun for him. I think a surprising thing about Brady that I would never be able to communicate fully is the multitude. I mean, just the infinity of ideas and imaginative directions that his mind would take. And so it kind of seemed like the more he was doing those, the more that he would just have all these crazy ideas. And so those series are actually some of his favorite, even though they take a long time to do, because they kind of give him this playground in which to create a little bundle of kooky. We wanted the imagination and the whimsy to play a big role, and even relationships as well. We love the idea of lunchbox cards because, here's these whimsical drawings, and a lot of times when kids see them, they would want to mimic that. They'd want to draw their own whimsical drawings. But it also helps a parent connect with their kid, or a friend connect with a friend, or it just brings fun and friendship. And so we really love that. But it's only been recently that we've been able to really move in the imagination direction, because we're like, that's really what is so unique, I think, about Brady's point of view, is just the imaginative elements. And as far as the name, so Brady and I have been married for 15 years. And somewhere early on, we were trying to find a domain name or something for a website just where we could keep up with family, just like a family blog. And basic things are kind of taken, but we had been reading Harry Potter along that same time. We used to read it out loud in the car on these road trips and stuff. And there is the ancient and most noble House of Black. And, our last name is Black, and so we just were kind of like House of Black. So it's kind of stuck. It's kind of our little family phrase of sorts, to be the House of Black. Mm-hmm. And I don't have any idea how familiar you are with Harry Potter, so this is a little bit of fandom going. But so that just kind of became the House of Black, and then there was always these jokes about it and whatever. Around the time that we were trying to name what would become Serious Creatures, we're like, well, we knew that Brady was going to be drawing just like animals and creatures and stuff like that. There's so much you can do with them that's just really, really fun, and we were kind of clear that was a direction that he was going to take. And we do have a like for that little tongue-in-cheek of, like using serious in that way works. But really, they're both from the House of Black. You have Sirius Black, and you have Creature, which is his house elf. And so there was kind of this double thing where we're like, both of these characters are from the House of Black, and they just work. Like they fit with our idea for our company. It's like these creatures aren't serious at all. Like that in itself is just kind of its own joke. And so it just, when it kind of came together, we were like, we actually don't really have any idea if this is a great business name. And, we've trademarked our business name. So it's, you do find out like what else is out there or whatever. And it's just kind of these two, just universal words. They're not really special kinds of words, the two of them, but it just fits so well with the company and with our own little family jokes that we just had to go with it.
I love it. Yeah, that's very creative. And there's something about it being that there's a Harry Potter tie-in that makes it even, more, endearing and funny, like in the same moment.
You're the first person who's ever asked us about it. And so
really?
This is our coming out party. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Hopefully we're not going to get, in trouble for it.
Oh, I can't imagine. Yeah.
We don't spell creature with a K.
Yes.
Right.
And we spell
serious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that is
the
Sirius Black, Creature who works for the House of Black, and then us, we are the House of Black. So.
That is awesome. I love it. I love that there's a whole story behind it. That's beautiful. I don't know. I mean, the thing that I used your little mini cards for, and this is back when you guys had them as printables, was I used them on our wedding.
That's right. I remember
our
that.
wedding paperbacks. Yeah, and all the little kids. We had a pack of kids there. And there were like 7 little kids under 7, and they all just were so delighted. And which one did you get? And oh my gosh, there's a poodle,
That's so fun. That's the sort of stuff we love to hear.
That's so great.
So yeah, that was very fun. And the whale was also very big. Yeah. Well, no pun intended there.
Yeah, for sure. I think for us, that's one of the, strangely enough, I've been making all of this since I've been overseas. And so I don't actually ever get to see anybody interact or see my stuff. It's all just via online. And last spring was I think really the first time that I'd ever shown at a big show. So we had a big show at like a big craft show, and it was seeing people's faces was just, it just blew me away, because our life is full of a lot of pain and suffering,
Mm-hmm.
and just we have a very, very real understanding of pain and suffering in the world, and then to see people be happy or whatnot with the stuff that we had made. I mean, it brought tears to my eyes almost all day. I was like, oh my gosh, there's people and they like it, and somehow we were able to like bring a small smile to a small time to a kid, and it was so amazing to me, because our days are filled with things that there's just a lot to not be smiling about, and to be able to provide a small smile is just so fun. And so to even hear that kids enjoyed it at your wedding, it's like, yes, this is exactly like, that's so perfect. It's such a delight to hear.
Yeah, good, cool. Well, and we have a family joke about a pink poodle. I don't even really understand where it all came from, but like, I don't know, my sister calls her dog a poodle. He's not a poodle, but I don't know. So then
awesome.
and you guys just did a Kickstarter. When we go live, it'll be a little while back, but what was the inspiration what was the inspiration for your book?
Well, I think for me, we don't have any kids of our own, and so a lot of times we borrow people's kids to play with, and so like our friends, hanging out with our friends' kids, I would just draw with them, and basically we would play imagination. It wasn't like, I'm going to give you an art lesson. It's just like, let's just think of the craziest thing we can think of. And I just had so much fun with it. And it turns out the kids enjoyed it too, because we would hear from their parents, like, that they really enjoyed just drawing with me. And it was just us together, and us just coming up with whimsical stories and just drawing nonsense together. And so at one point Amber asked, how can we try to bottle that up, or how can we help parents do that who don't naturally do that? And so that's kind of the inspiration for our book, was to try to help parents interact with their kids in this kind of whimsical way, to really just turn up the imagination, because we really believe in imagination, more so even than art, because I love art, but I really believe that imagination can change some things, and with whatever field you go into, and just try to give kids permission to draw helicopter shoes, and to draw astronauts on fruit, and whatever, we can come up with, and just to give them a little push to say, hey, it's okay, go crazy. And I think parents enjoy seeing their kids do that and being able to interact with that. And so that's really our inspiration, was to try to take these little drawing sessions that I had with kids and figure out how to help parents do that.
So awesome. Yes, I cannot wait to get a copy, or 3. Yeah, that'll be a delight. Yeah, well, and it's so cool too that I don't know, that was one of the questions that I'd sent over, but that you've already addressed it, but that you're living in this, I don't know, in the midst of a lot of upheaval with the kids that you guys interact with, but then, I don't know, it's also this really interesting juxtaposition of sending out all this joy into the world, both with them and meeting the kids you get to help at the home, but also through this book and everything else, like all this joy coming out to kids across the world. Like, it's just really cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. It's really fun, and it's fun to do, and it's a good balance. It's been a lot of work for sure, which, anything you undertake like that's going to be a lot of work, but it really is a good it is a juxtaposition, and it's also these two sides. So like, you can have a really heavy day, and then you come home and you're using the craziest phrases around the house, like, I don't know, I just think the cat needs a little bit more bubbles, or like, you're just saying these things that are like, how can he be more, floaty or something? And so you're saying these things with like animal words, and then like, it just sounds like crazy talk, and so you catch yourself just saying things that are normal around our house but shouldn't be, like, taped out of context. It'd be really funny. And so it's just fun. I think it brings a lightheartedness. And so even though we're doing it as work, because it ends up being a priority, it ends up happening, where we just have something that's more lighthearted or more fun. And so it's even though it is a lot to juggle, I think we sort of need it, like we just need to be taken from one to the other, like taken from my like business mindedness to give something to the world, and also taken from that really emotionally heavy place and to come back to some lightheartedness. So I think they both really help the other.
So where will Serious Creatures be heading next?
Well, hopefully the book, the imagination book that we created, it's called Serious Starters, and hopefully that will. The Kickstarter has succeeded already, which is fantastic, and
Yay.
so hopefully we will be able to make more of those. Also, there's a few people that we're working with to try to work on some children's books, so probably in a books direction, in addition to keeping up like the cards and making new lines of those as well. And hopefully we just started doing some kind of art tutorials and kind of a video series. And so hopefully in a video direction as well. But all with the mindset of trying to help parents help their kids imagine and draw simple things, because our art tutorials are really aimed at kids, and so they're real simple drawings, or we try to make them simple and try to give some kids some handholds on how to go forward with things they want to draw, because the kids aren't dumb. They know what they're drawing. They know what they want to draw. It's not coming out right, and so they get frustrated with it. And so trying to give them small little handholds to make their drawings a little bit cooler to help them hopefully get to the next step. And in a classic way, they're kind of nutty videos, hopefully. So.
But I will link them up. I saw them on your blog, too. That's really exciting. Yeah, growing up, my dad would draw birds with us, and the birds often had wheel feet. Like, yeah, totally not. Yeah.
Steal that.
Yeah, wheel feet are good, yeah. Thank you very much for joining me, and thank you for everything you guys do. Like, it's so totally inspiring to see that you throw yourself wholeheartedly in a couple of really amazing directions. So thank you.
Thanks. It's our pleasure.
So if someone listening has a big dream about how they could make a change in the world, what advice would you give them about bringing their dream into action?
I have to say, just start moving in that direction. Just start showing up, start taking action. I am just by nature everything can exist inside my head, and it was very hard for me to take a step. I think there's so much, there's fear, they'll say fear of success and fear of failure, and also some things just seem so huge, But if you take the next step, that next step will usually lead you to the next one and to the next one, and things just begin to unfold. And largely that's because when you take that first step of action, one thing I'm so thankful to the writer Donald Miller about is he talks about inciting incidences. And Brady and I talk about that a lot, inciting incidents, which is usually just a thing in a story that makes action happen. And so, you commit to go to a conference maybe, or you say you just commit to something basically, and then you have to show up, So you start showing up, and usually what you learn at that juncture gives you more information and gives more of an opportunity for something to resonate with you, or you meet a person who can help you get to that next step, and you just follow that next thing. And I think a lot of times it's easy to get paralyzed by not knowing, so many things that we don't know. And but in reality, if you take the step and then the next step, it's becoming familiar in each one of those steps. Take action, instead of just thinking about how you want it to be different. And if it doesn't work out like you think, it's totally fine. Like, there's just really no harm in that. You learn some things about yourself and what you do and don't want.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think a lot of it has to do with action and doing a thing, as opposed to just tweeting about it or making Facebook things, or
thinking about it.
Yeah, thinking about it. Or I frequently use the phrase as it takes no courage to criticize. And things at the home frequently are criticized because it's not Disneyland. And so I'm like you are welcome to criticize if you also are going to show up and help me fix it. And I'm not actually interested in any of your suggestions until you are also willing to come here and help me do this suggestion. And so it's just this action, because sit armchair criticizing or armchair, pontificating, I've got no great respect for it. I want to see action. In addition, so that's kind of piggybacking off Amber. And for me, I think, but being okay with failing and picking something to do that's worth failing at. I think that's one of the things that even just last night, as we had a difficult day, I was talking with our housemate, and we're just kind of reflecting on this day, and we thought, it's well, you know what? This is a good fight. This is not anything worth doing. These are cliched parent things. Anything worth doing is going to be difficult, right? If this was easy, why would we be doing it? It's these are very, very real problems. The world really is messed up. And this isn't going to be easy, but this is a good fight. this is worth failing at. This is worth being embarrassed and, for, or worth being humiliated, because things don't work right. And so I think that just really grabbing hold of that idea, like find something that's worth failing at and go give it a shot. And if it fails, that's okay, because that was a good fight. Like, I'd rather fail at trying what we're doing than fail at, something that is lesser.
Yes. Oh, yes. I love both of those. Like, I'm also a project manager. That's the other day job. But yeah, like the project manager in me loves the, putting yourself and getting in action and all that. And then, yeah, the kind of, I don't know, the spiritual, motivational side of me loves it takes courage to criticize and pick something worth failing at. So, yes, those are both great. Thank you so much. And then last and most joyfully, what are 3 ways you can think of to jumpstart joy in your life, in the world, or in other people's lives?
I think for me, really when I think of joy, I don't really think of it as, like confetti and glitter everywhere. I really think of it as just a real, like, just sound, just deep, like, joy. And it's for us, it would be much more of a spiritual level of that. And I think that for me, it's serving others, and really pouring your life out for others. I think that there's no greater joy in that. And it seems crazy because it seems like the joyful thing would be, or the thing to make you happier would be to go do the thing that makes you happy. Well, in the end, that will be happy. But even for me, like, if I just had the opportunity just to draw all day, that would be easy. And I would probably really enjoy it, but I would give drawing up in a second. I would give it up tomorrow, no problem, because of just serving these kids. And it is crazy here. It's so difficult, but you're going to have to pry me from this. And I think that just that serving of others and pouring yourself out, I think is, for me, there's no greater joy in that.
Yeah, and I think my thoughts on that really are just an elaboration of what Brady said. But I think that to find something that you love that really resonates with you, and I don't mean something that you like I can sometimes feel like, I like action movies or something, or I like to go to the gym, and there's all of those like things, but there's usually things I think in us that we're just kind of wired for, we're made for, and when we begin doing things along those lines, then it just really resonates. There's that thing that's happening on the outside, the thing that's happening on the inside, and it really resonates. And I think finding what that is, like, is it learning? Is it, cooking? But I think finding that thing that really resonates and then figuring out how to serve with that, figuring out how to use that thing to love others and to serve them. And I think, with Brady, it's like his the imaginative elements in his brain are just always there. It's this core part of who he is that he won't be able to escape. And when he can just be alive and creating in that place, it's so native to who he is. And so finding a way to share that with others that also brings them joy is this connection. It's like it's joyful for him, and then there's this just joyful for others, and then there's a connection between those two. And there's just something that's so fiery and electric about that when you can find it. And so I think finding that thing, serving it, and then serving others with that is really moving on that path toward joy, I think. And then the other thing I've been thinking and just really learning a lot about lately actually is, and this is more like bringing joy to the world, and it is actually hard, and I don't know that it initially brings so much joy to the person who's attempting it, but is to really figure out a way to make it a discipline or a mindful thing to see each person that you see as a human, as a fellow human. I think after being with our kids for a while, and then, so the kids who come to our home are essentially the same kids who we see out on the street. And when you see them out on the street, they're nagging you and they're pulling at you and they're following you, and, whatever it is that you're going to do, you can't escape that. Like, whether you're going to give something to them or whether you're not, like, it's still this just ever this thing. And so it's kind of a nuisance, like in an everyday sort of a way. It's kind of a nuisance, or you don't know how to feel about it, so it's uncomfortable. Like, there's just so much discomfort in that person who's different or whatever. And I think that having the kids at the home has allowed me just to do a lot of reflecting on the fact that I don't necessarily see people in public all the time the way that they really are inside, like in their heart, like they're a human. And so I think responding to them with humanly kindness, which a lot of times to me is just to look them in the eye instead of totally avoiding them. Or, if it's appropriate, like with a kid, it's like I'll just pat them on the shoulder too. It's like you're not diseased, like I can't touch you, and even if you were, maybe I should really consider that you also need human care, Yeah. And I think that people know when they've been forgotten or when they've been seen, and that I want to be. This is really hard for me, and I'm not good at this yet. But I do think that it brings better things into the world, But to just recognize that a person you see that's so different or whatever, it's like it doesn't matter whether they brought it. To some extent, people say like, well, they brought it upon themselves or whatever. It's like, well, you don't know that for one. But even if they did, it's like, man, if I was living in the reality of all the things I should have brought on myself, like that would be really bad, And just kind of going like, so what? Like like they're hurting, you're hurting. Like they, could use kindness. You can use kindness, and just seeing them as a human, I think is a thing. But it's so uncomfortable. It really is uncomfortable is the best word I can use, I think. So, but I do think that begins to bring a lightness into the world. And then there's a really great feeling, I think I'm finding associated with that, where there's this scary thing or it feels uncomfortable because it's not my everyday habit. I'm sure some of your listeners have this as an everyday habit, but I am not that far along in things. But there really is a joy in it of realizing like, I could have ignored this human, and instead it's like I got to smile at them, or I got to buy them a sandwich, or and there's a real, I think, sense of satisfaction of not turning away from that that's really lightening. So I would add that too.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think there's something in there around seeing the spark of divinity in each person, if you're a spiritual person, but like recognizing that we all come from the same place, whatever that source is, and being able to find that in each person is, I think it's hard and it is joyful if it can become a practice. I really like that. Thank you. Well, you guys, this has been amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks. It's been so fun.
Yeah. I really appreciate you taking the time and just so many great answers, and thank you so much. Best wishes with everything that you're doing. And
thanks.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, you guys, so much for that amazing interview. I am just inspired and blown away by your dedication to children all over the world. So thank you. If you guys want to help, I will have the links on how to get in touch with Amber and Brady and support Home of Hope in the show notes, which can be found over at jumpstartyourjoy.com, and go over and help support them. And Amber and Brady also let me know that they have an annual sale on their Christmas greeting cards. Well, all their cards. Usually comes up after Thanksgiving, and so I'll link that up in my show notes as well. When we come back in episode 65, I've got an interview with Rosie Williams. She is the author of Repurposed Faith, and she and I talk about finding joy, moments that jumpstart our lives, and an amazing little camper that she's refurbishing. I know you're just going to love getting to know her better. I will see you guys next week, and until then, I hope that your days are filled with so much joy.